not bettered by praying to the so-called God of love, decided to pray to his opposite instead. If God would not help them, perhaps the devil would. So Satanism came into being, a parody of Christianity, a mockery of it. It was a revolt against the harshness of the church. As it turned out, the devil did not help the poor peasant either. But at least he was showing his disdain for the authorities. He was going against the establishment. It did not take Mother Church long to find out about this rebellion. Satanism was anti-Christian. Witchcraft was also, in their eyes, anti-Christian. Ergo, witchcraft and Satanism were one and the same. In 1604, King James I passed his Witchcraft Act, but this was repealed in 1736. It was replaced by an act that stated that there was no such thing as witchcraft, and to pretend to have occult powers was to face being charged with fraud. By the late 17th century, the surviving members of the craft had gone underground into hiding. For the next 300 years, to all appearances, witchcraft was dead. But a religion that had lasted 20,000 years, in effect, did not die so easily. In small groups, surviving covens, oftentimes only of family members, the craft continued. In the literary field, Christianity had a heyday. Printing had been invented and developed during the persecutions. Therefore, anything published on the subject of witchcraft was written from the church's point of view. Later, books had only these early works from which to refer, so, not unnaturally, they were heavily biased against the old religion. In England, in 1951, the last laws against witchcraft were finally repealed. This cleared the way for the witches themselves to speak up. In 1954, Dr. Gerald Brousseau Gardner, in his book Witchcraft Today, said in effect, "Witchcraft was a religion, and in fact it still is. I know, because I am a witch myself." He went on to tell how the craft was still very much alive, albeit underground. He was the first to give the witches' side of the story. At the time of his writing, it seemed to him that the craft was rapidly declining and perhaps only hanging on by a thread. He was greatly surprised when, as a result of the circulation of his books, he began to hear from many covens throughout Europe, all still happily practicing their beliefs. Yet these surviving covens had learned their lesson. They did not wish to take the chance of coming out into the open. Who was to say the persecutions could not start again? For a while, Gerald Gardner's was the single voice speaking for the craft. He claimed to have been initiated into an English coven near Christ Church just before the start of the Second World War. He was excited by what he found. He had spent a lifetime in the study of religio magic and now was a part of it. He wanted to rush out and tell everyone, but he was not allowed to. Finally, though, after much pleading, he was allowed to present some of the true witch beliefs and practices by weaving them into a novel, High Magic's Aid, published in 1949. It took 5 more years for him to persuade the coven to let him do the factual treatment. Complementing Witchcraft Today, his third book was published in 1959, titled The Meaning of Witchcraft. From his lifetime study of religion and magic, Gardner felt that what he found as the remains of witchcraft was incomplete and, in places, inaccurate. For millennia, the old religion had been a purely oral tradition. It was not until the persecutions, with the separating of covens and the resultant loss of intercommunication, that anything was put into writing. At that time, when the witches were having to meet in the shadows, the rituals were finally written down in what became known as the Book of Shadows. The book was then copied and recopied as it passed over the years from coven leader to coven leader. It was only natural that errors would creep in. Gardner took the rituals of the coven to which he belonged, a basically English Celtic group, and rewrote them as he felt they should have been. This form then became known as Gardnerian witchcraft. In recent years, there have been many wild and wonderful theories and accusations advanced, from Gardner made up the whole thing to he commissioned Aleister Crowley to write the Book of Shadows for him. Such charges scarcely bear the dignity of a response, but details of Gardner's preparatory work can be found in Stuart Farrar's books, What Witches Do and 8 Sabbats for Witches. Whatever one's feelings about Gardner, however, whatever one's belief in Wicca's origins, all present-day witches and would-be witches owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude for having had the courage to stand up and speak out for witchcraft. It is because of him that we can enjoy the craft in its many forms today. In America, the first witch to stand up and be recognized was myself, Raymond Buckland. At that time, there were no covens visible in this country. Initiated in Scotland, Perth, by Gardner's high priestess, I set out to emulate Gardner insofar as to try to straighten out long-held misconceptions and to show the craft for what it truly is. Soon Sybil Leek arrived on the scene, followed by Gavin and Yvonne Frost and other individuals. It was an exciting time as more and more covens and many different traditions came into the open, or at least made themselves known. Today, the would-be witch has a wide selection of traditions from which to choose: Gardnerian, Celtic in many variations, Saxon, Alexandrian, Druidic, Algird, Norse, Irish, Scottish, Sicilian, Huna, etc. Details of some of these different traditions are given in Appendix A. That there are so many and such varied branches, denominations, or traditions of witchcraft is admirable. As I said in the introduction to this work, we are all different. It is not surprising that there is no one religion that suits all people. In the same way, then, there can be no one type of witchcraft to suit all witches. Some traditions like lots of ritual, while some prefer simplicity. Some are from Celtic backgrounds, others from Saxon, Scots, Irish, Italian, or any of a number of other backgrounds. Some favor a matriarchy, others a patriarchy, and still others seek a balance. Some prefer to worship in a group, coven, while others are for solitary worship. With the large number of different denominations, then, there is now more likelihood of everyone finding a path they can travel in comfort. Religion has come a long way from its humble beginnings in the caves of prehistory. Witchcraft, as one small facet of religion, has also come a long way. It has grown to become a worldwide religion, legally recognized. Today, across America, it is not at all unusual to find open Wiccan festivals and seminars taking place in such unlikely places as family campgrounds and motels such as the Holiday Inn. Witches appear on television and radio talk shows. They are written up in local and national newspapers and magazines. Witchcraft courses are given in colleges. Even in the armed forces, Wicca is recognized as a valid religion. Department of the Army pamphlet number 165-13, Religious Requirements and Practices of Certain Selected Groups, a handbook for chaplains, does include instructions as to the religious rites of witches right alongside those of Islamic groups, Sikh groups, Christian heritage, Indian heritage, Japanese ancestry, and Jewish groups. Yes, witchcraft has a place in past history and will have a definite place in the future. The philosophy of witchcraft,